Hello, Fox babies. Okay, so you should have just watched the Flocabulary video about text structures, and hopefully you thought it was as catchy as I did. So now we're going to take the information that we learned from that video and we're going to put it into a less cool but still handy outline. Handy because you're going to be able to use this later for assignments this week and next week. So don't lose it after you finish filling it out. So Mickey is just holding our place here for us. Before I ask, Haley, can you tell me one of the text structures that you learned about in the Flocabulary video? Exactly right. Description. This is one that we've already talked about. It's even one that you've already practiced. So we're going to take a look at these little posters that have information about the text structures, and then we're going to plug that information into our outline, which you should have handy already. If not, pause the video and go get it. Okay, so description text structure is a text that's written that explains a topic, idea, person, place, or object by listing characteristics, features, and examples that describe it. So you're going to hear a lot of details. You're going to hear probably some adjectives or descriptive language, sensory language, all to describe a topic. And then some of the clues that you're going to look for to be able to figure out that it is a description text is these signal words, like for example, for instance, such as, in addition, characteristics are, to illustrate, in fact, and there's actually a lot more than that. This is just a few. Okay, and then you see this here. This is what we call a graphic organizer. This particular one we refer to as a web. And this is, we're going to talk a little bit more about this tomorrow. But now let's use that information and go ahead and fill out our handouts. Okay, so you should have your handout that looks like this. Up in the right-hand corner, it says Monday, so you know you're on the right one. Okay, so if we look, the first text structure that we just talked about is called description. And some of those signal words, for example, some other clues would be adjectives, sensory language. Maybe some other signal words might be, for instance, you know, they're giving like a lot of examples, to describe whatever the topic is. You know, it's description. Okay, what's another text structure that you heard about in the song, the Flocabulary song? Malachi? Yes, chronological order, or actually in the video, it was referred to as sequence. So chronological order is the same thing as sequence or sequence in order. You guys also already know a lot about this when we learned about biographies. A lot you learned about this whenever you made your timelines in social studies. So this should be familiar to you. So a text that's written in this text structure describes an event or how to do something in the order that the events or steps occurred. And this is, again, just one example of a graphic organizer that you might use to organize information from the text. Again, we'll talk about this later. Then signal words for sequence and order would be words like first, then, next, after, finally. All these words are telling you that the order in which something is happening, right? Before, during, not long after, the first step. If you see words like that, a lot of words like that, then you might be reading a text that is written in chronological order or sequence. Okay, so let's go ahead and add this one to our outline. So remember, if I'm going too fast, you can always pause the video, replay, If you need to pause it so that you can get this information into your into your outline, go ahead and do that too. Okay, so this one is called, we're gonna, and for the sake of our outline, we're gonna call this sequence and order, or you can put chronological order. They all mean the same thing, but you'll see this word sequence a lot. Some of those signal words would be first, then, next, after, finally. Some other clues to look for would be if you see dates or years. Like if you're reading a biography, chances are it's going to be written in some kind of a chronological or sequential order. Not long after. How-tos, like if you were reading a book about how to make a paper airplane. Again, that's going to be written in sequential order because you're gonna have to follow the steps in order to make the airplane. Or if you're following a recipe, something like that. So we can add biographies, recipes, steps, things like that are all gonna be written in that sequence. Okay. So what is another text structure that you heard about in the vocabulary video? Aubrey O. Yes. Compare and contrast. Again, another one that you guys are already familiar with. I think we talked about this right before spring break. The longest spring break ever. No, I'm just kidding. So compare and contrast. This text structure explains how two or more topics are similar and how they are different. I think the text that we read right before we left was called The Two Harriets. Remember, we were learning about two of the different Harriets that helped to end slavery. So this is what a graphic organizer for compare and contrast might look like. You've definitely seen this part before. We use this all the time, a Venn diagram. That's what this is called, a Venn diagram. You have two different things that you're comparing and contrasting, and where it overlaps, it's kind of where you write the similarities, and on the outside where you write the differences. You can also have, you can have a lot of different overlapping topics, and you can have more than 2 circles. You can have 3 circles. Another way that we have, another thing that we've used before is what we call a T-chart, where we chart our information from the text, or our notes from the text, like this in columns. It could be 3 columns, 4 columns. Anyway, just to help you remember that. Okay, and then some of the words can be like different, similarly, both, in contrast. Although, on the other hand, similar to. Okay, those are just some of the signal words. Sorry, I keep picking the papers up. You guys are probably trying to look at that. Okay. Share screen. Okay, let's look again back at our outline, and we're gonna add compare and contrast. You guys probably saw this Venn diagram here and already knew what this one was gonna be, right? Okay, so some of those words, different, similarly, in contrast, oh, probably a contrast, both. On the other hand, bring that in. Something else to look for is whenever you have phrases like stronger than, weaker than, something than, like taller than, smaller than. And maybe we can write it like that as our clue, so we can remember that that one. Like if you're saying the crocodile's snout is slimmer than and alligators. I don't know. So you're looking for that something than. If you ever, I've seen some of you guys read those like versus books, like one animal versus another. Those are going to be like compare and contrast kind of text structures. Okay. As we find more, we can add more to these charts. These are just, again, some of those signals. Okay. All right, and the fourth one, let's see, I'm gonna call on Aiden. Can you give me another one? Do you think you know what that next one might be called? Yeah, cause and effect. Something else that we also talked about. Yay. What's nice is that I know that you guys have heard these terms before. You might not remember or need a little refresher about what they are exactly, but now we're applying these terms that we've heard before to a reading strategy that we can use. So, cause and effect. This structure is written in a way that tells the cause or causes of events and their effects. Or effect, could be one effect. Okay, again, this is just an example of an organizer. You know, we can have a whole linking chain, one thing leading to another thing, or we can have one cause that has a lot of effects, or we can have a lot of causes that all lead to one effect. So different organizers that you could potentially use here. Signal words, because. So because this, then this, right? So as a result of, therefore, this leads to, this is one to definitely look for. If, ... then, ... We know that's going to be a cause and effect relationship. Effects of, and maybe due to. Okay, let's go ahead and add those. Okay. Cause and effect. All right, so again, some of those words are becomes, so, as a result, you know, you're about to hear an effect of something, okay? Therefore, this leads to, again, I know I'm typing, my typing might be a little faster than your writing, so go ahead and pause the video after each one, even if you need to. That's the great thing about having a video. The effects of, maybe due to, okay, these are all clues. So some of those types of texts might be like, why did the dinosaurs go extinct? A book that or a text that has that title probably is going to give you a series of events or causes, one thing leading to another, for why some scientists think that dinosaurs went extinct. And if you did the science experiment last week, then you got to create a food web for that. Anyway, that could also be a cause and effect. Remember we talked about if you remove one thing from that food chain, then it's going to have a ripple effect. That one event, that would be the cause. The effect would be anything below that in the food chain there would be a lot more of them, and then anything above that in the food chain, there would be less of them because you're taking away their food. Anyway, so cause and effect. All right, lastiest one. Let's see. Okay, Wyatt, what's another one that you remember from the video? Do you remember the last one from the video? Wyatt. Problem and solution. So this is one that we haven't really talked about yet. So I understand if this is new or sounds new because it is new. Okay, so this text structure, the author presents a problem and one or more solutions to the problem. The The text may also include the pros and cons of each solution. Just a couple possible graphic organizers that you could use for this. Here's the problem, here's the solution. Maybe you have a problem and possible solutions, several possible solutions. Okay, and then the signal words for this are problem, conflict, dilemma, possible solution, reason, the question is, or another one that I see sometimes too is the word solve. Okay, so let's add those. Okay, problem and solution. All right, don't worry, we're gonna go back and go over each of these more in depth. This is just a video so that you can get your outline filled in and refer back to it in later assignments. So don't worry if it's not all clicking yet. Okay, so problem and solution, you got problem, conflict, dilemma, ooh, that's a juicy word, possible solution, solve, reason. Careful with this word reason though, because that could show up in cause and effect. 1, 2. You'll see, we'll talk about that in a minute. But sometimes these words, these little signal words will show up in other text structures. So you don't want to only rely on just one signal word. You have to look at the whole picture to figure out what the text structure is. Okay. All right, so now you're going to be able to use this resource. Let's go back to it. Sorry. Now you're going to be able to use this resource to do those assignments. It's going to help you identify the text structure, an informational or a nonfiction text. Okay, this is super important, being able to do that. I told you all that knowing how to summarize is the most important strategy, whether you're reading fiction or nonfiction. So I would say that this is the second most important strategy for when you are reading nonfiction, because it's going to help you to know what to pay attention to, like what the important details are in whatever the text is that you're reading, and which is going to ultimately help you to better understand the information you're reading, and help you to remember what you've read. So that's why it's super important. Okay, and this works, this strategy works for whole entire books of nonfiction information. You can apply it to the whole thing, or you can chunk it and apply it maybe to a chapter. Maybe one chapter is written in more of a compare and contrast text structure. Maybe another chapter is describing a subtopic of whatever the main topic is, and it's a description. Okay, so it applies to whole books and then also chapters of text and even shorter passages of text, which I'm going to use examples to show you in just a second. So when you are analyzing, which remember, analyze means to look at closely so that you can understand it better. So we're looking at the bottom of our handout now. So when we are analyzing the text structure of a text, you can follow these steps here. Okay, first step is going to be read the text. You knew that. Okay, so the next step is going to be to, and this can be happening while you're reading the text. So you're going to think about or write the main idea of the text. Okay, you want to know the main idea of the text because, like I was mentioning before, it's not just the signal words that are going to tell you what the text structure is. It's the signal words along with thinking about what the main idea, what is the overall message of the text. That's going to tell you the text structure. Okay, step 3 would be look for those signal words and clues. Again, this can be simultaneously, which means at the same time as while you're reading. You're going to identify the text structure. Okay. And we're not even going to practice step 4 today, because again, I want to do that when we go more in depth into each text structure. But the last step would be to choose the appropriate organizer, which are these little symbols that you see over here in the last column of the handout. Choose the appropriate organizer that goes with the text structure to record the most important details and information. This is the stuff that you're supposed to remember from what you just read. The whole point of reading it in the first place, right? Okay. So I'm going to do a quick example with you guys. So these are super short passages. Let me stop sharing here. Okay, these are super short passages here, but just to give you an idea of what they look like, or to remind you maybe, because you maybe already knew. Okay, so let's read this first one together. This is also in your packet, so if you don't have this yet, pause video, you'll get it. Okay, so first little passage here. Wild chimpanzees are rapidly disappearing. Some people are trying to solve this problem. Otherwise, chimpanzees may one day exist only in zoos. Sorry. People are trying to save the rainforests and woodlands where the chimps live from being cut down. It will take many people working together to solve the problem. Okay, so as I was reading, I was thinking about what the main idea of this passage was. And the main idea of this passage, hopefully you agree, is that chimpanzees are disappearing because their homes in their rainforests are being cut down. So people are trying to save them, okay? So if you, let me try to zoom in a little here. My little MacGyver iPad stand over here is just not super sturdy. Okay. Sorry. So I know what the main idea is, and I know it has to do with chimpanzees disappearing, which kind of sounds like a problem, right? And then I also have in the same passage what some people are trying to do to help, which is kind of like a solution, right? So this first one is a problem and solution. And I know that because I just explained what the main idea was, but also there are some clues in the text, some signal words and clues that kind of told me, for example, solve this problem. A pretty obvious clue there. But, so this is the problem, that wild chimpanzees are disappearing, but people are trying to save the rainforest, right? So that's the solution. Okay, let's look at the next one. Try to get that glare out of there. Okay. If you can, try reading it with me, at least reading along with me. Okay. Chimpanzees and humans are alike in many ways. Ooh. My brain is already thinking about those signal words that we just talked about, or words that might signal what this is going to be. I know that alike and different is one way that we say compare and contrast. So I bet that's a signal word. Okay. A baby chimp laughs when its mother tickles it. After chimpanzees fight, they kiss and make up. When one chimpanzee comforts another, it gives it a hug or a pat on the back. Therefore, of course, many ways that chimpanzees and humans are different. There are, of course, right? Chimpanzees are smaller and stronger than. There's some examples of those clues I was telling you about, the blanker than. An adult male chimpanzee stands 3 or 4 feet tall and weighs about 100 pounds, but a chimpanzee can lift more weight than a man who is 6 feet tall. I would say even this word here is probably the signal word. Okay, so hopefully by now you know that this is written in which text structure? Great. Compare and contrast. I know that because of the signal words that were mentioned, and also if I'm thinking about what the main idea or the main message of this passage is, it's that chimpanzees and humans are alike in many ways. There are, of course, many ways that chimpanzees and humans are different. So looking at these two sentences, I can see that we're talking about how chimpanzees and humans are alike. Next one. Chimps live in groups and like each other a lot, but sometimes they fight. Because they don't want to stay angry at each other after a fight, they make up by holding a hand out to the other and kissing. Oh, this is just such a sweet thing to learn about chimpanzees. They show they are sorry with pats and hugs. Then the anger goes away. Okay, notice the information in this passage. There is some similar information in this passage. However, they are written in different text structures. Both of them talk about the chimpanzees giving hugs and kissing each other. But the way that the information is presented in a different way for a different reason. This one was meant to compare and contrast humans and chimpanzees, whereas this one, well, let's see. Okay, so the main idea of this, of number 3, was, well, if I were to sum this up or give this a main idea, I would say that, well, chimps fight, then they make up by kissing and hugging. Right? Okay, so first they fight, this thing happens, then they kiss and make up. Okay, so some of the signal words that I see in here are because and then. Okay, those are signal words to tell me that this might be a, what do you think? The ones that are left. Cause and effect, right? The cause would be that the chimps fight. The effect of that is, well, then they don't want to stay angry. So the effect of that is that they kiss and hold hands, make up. Okay. Passage here. All right, let's read number 4 together. So a chimpanzee's body is made for climbing and swinging in trees. First, it uses its long arms to reach a branch. Next, with its flexible hands and feet, it grabs and hooks onto the branch. Finally, it swings from branch to branch. It swings from that branch to another branch of the tree. So this, the main idea of this passage is it's mainly about how a monkey swings from tree to tree, the steps that it takes to do that, right? So if we are talking about the steps that it's taking and we have these words first, next, finally, we know that it is a what text structure? Sequence, right? Yes. Okay, so we only have one left, so you probably already know what it is, but let's go ahead and go through the steps anyway. So let's read the lesson. It is fun to read about chimpanzees. Yes, I have had fun. All wild chimpanzees live in Africa. Little tidbit, right? They live mostly in thick rainforests, thick being an adjective, right? And in woodlands. There are two types or species of chimpanzees, the common chimpanzee and the bonobo, also known as the pygmy chimpanzee. Okay, so I notice an adjective here, and then specific types of the chimpanzee being named, a description of where they live. So this is just a quick description of chimpanzees, where they live in the two types, right? So what text structure is this? The only one that's left. Yeah, very good. Okay, so I think that's it. Today, the only other thing that you need to do today is you are going to do the text structure word sort, which should be in your packet. Not super organized here. That's perfect. Okay. So you're gonna have something like this. I'll probably cut the cards up for you just because I'm nice like that. But you'll have this thing called a text structure sort. It's backwards. Okay, anyway, these little cards, and you are going to read the little cards, and you are going to try to decide which text structure, the little tiny passage, or even if it's like a sentence, what do you think it is? Which text structure is it representing? And that's it. Have fun with that. Don't glue it down until you check your answer key. That way, if you make a mistake, you're not ripping the paper when you pull it off. But you want to make sure that you have it correct, so that it's another thing that you can go back and reference. But also, don't look at the answer key until you've already tried it. Okay. All right, it's been fun.